Why is Hrvatska called Croatia in English? I have no idea. So today, Name Explain, this YouTube channel, is going to teach us. And in Italian, we call your country Croatia. So it's more similar to the English than it is to the Croatian. I want to learn Croatian at some point. It's a cool language, so maybe in the future, if you have any recommendations for videos to teach Croatian or to learn about the language in general, I want to make a reaction very soon. So yeah, let's check out this video right now. Let's learn something new.
Support Name Explain on Patreon for $1 a month to enjoy ad-free videos, exclusive content, your name at the end of each video, as well as the chance to have your idea for a Name Explain video made into reality. Go to patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below. Croatia is a nation.
I do have a Patreon too. If you want to support the channel, super chats, membership, Patreon, you choose it. I will really appreciate it. But if you don't have the means, don't worry, just watch the videos and subscribe.
Located in Central/Southeast Europe. It resides primarily across the northeastern coast of the Adriatic Sea and shares land borders with Slovenia, Hungary, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. The nation is home to around 4 million people with an area of just over 20,000 miles squared. Is it part of the Balkans? Well, that seems to be somewhat debated, and the general consensus is that parts of this nation sit within the Balkans Peninsula. It is also a staggeringly beautiful country, with places like Split, the island of Kirk, and Dubrovnik especially, looking like locations ripped straight out of a fantasy series.
Go and check out, I made a reaction to the video by Ryan Shirley, top 10 places in Croatia. Oh my god. That was mind-blowing.
Or something. The nation was also home to the largest truffle ever found up until 2014, when
Not a fan of truffles, to be honest.
This seriously seems to be a point of pride in Croatia, and rightfully so, I suppose. I feel Croatia's biggest claim to fame should be its incredible determination to make sure that Bosnia and Herzegovina got as minimal coastline as possible. In many languages around the world, this country is called Croatia, like in English, or has a name of a similar sound. Take the French name of Croatie, or the German name of Croatian, or the Hindi name of Croatia, or even the Japanese name of Croatia. All these names sound very similar to that name of Croatia. However, a name sounding like this isn't universal for the nation. Many languages use a name for Croatia that sounds nothing like Croatia. The most noticeable example of this being the official language of the nation itself, Croatian. Yep, in Croatian, Croatia isn't called Croatia. It is instead called Hrvatska. This name of Hrvatska looks and sounds nothing like the name of Croatia. This is something in language called an endonym and an exonym. An endonym is the native name for a location used by its native speakers, whereas an exonym is the name used for that area by non-native speakers. So in this case, Hrvatska is the endonym and Croatia is the exonym. Croatia is far from the only country to have different names in different languages. There's Deutschland in Germany, Suomi in Finland, and so on. The early days of Name Explain had a strong focus on these kinds of names, but I haven't talked about them in years, so it felt right to highlight them again. Anyway, Croatian isn't the only language to use a name for the country along the lines of Hrvatska. The languages of Slovenian, Serbian, and Bosnian all use similar names to Hrvatska to refer to the country of Croatia. You would probably notice this, but there is something of a link between these nations that use Hrvatska-sounding names. The languages mentioned of Croatian, Slovenian, Serbian, and Bosnian are all Slavic languages. It seems that Slavic languages tend.
Why is he not saying Serbian? I think Serbian is very similar, no? If I'm not mistaken, before the... Yeah, when it was still Yugoslavia, the official language was Serbo-Croatian. So I'm guessing the languages are similar. I'm not an expert on the topic, so yeah, if I'm wrong, please correct me.
To favor names that sound like Hrvatska, though there are non-Slavic languages.
Hrvatistan. This is Turkey, right?
That use Hrvatska-inspired names, such as the Turkish name for Croatia of Hrvatistan, or the Hungarian name of Horvatország.
Yeah, come on, Hungarians, they all have a different name for every country. I've learned that by watching the reels on Instagram. There are so many of those videos. Country. How do you call this other country? What about you? What about you? It's always the Hungarians. That's super cool. I love that. I just love that so much. I mean, those unique features are just amazing.
I imagine these kinds of names came about due to geographic closeness to Croatia, as opposed to linguistic closeness. What's perhaps most interesting, however, is that many other Slavic languages use names for the country that seem like something of a hybrid between the names of Croatia and Hrvatska. Take the Czech name for the country of Hrvatska, or the Polish name of Hrvatsia. These names that sound like a weird mixture of Croatia and Hrvatska aren't some weird human-made construct made to try and please everybody. There is a reason that they sound like both names, and that's because the names of Croatia and Hrvatska are very much linked together. In fact, they're the exact same name. Often when it comes to endonyms and exonyms, the names are completely different with different origins and etymologies. The aforementioned examples of Germany and Deutschland are great.
Yeah, Germany, I think it's all different tribes of Germany in the past, right? Like Alemania, Alemanni, Tedeschi, the Teutonic.
Example of that. These two names mean completely different things with different origins entirely. This is not the case with Croatia and Hrvatska, however. These are the same word with the same meaning, just translated into different languages. In fact, what would be more fitting to say is that Croatia is just the English translation of the name Hrvatska. Yeah, Hrvatska is the original form of this name before it was changed into Croatia, which makes sense considering it's the native name for the land. It would be strange if the name outsiders used came first and the natives adapted it. Though countries having names given to them by non-natives isn't an entirely novel concept, I suppose. This name of Hrvatska simply means the land of the Croats, with Croats being the name of this land's native inhabitants, or as the Croats are called in their native Croatian, the Hrvati. Understanding that the Croats are called the Hrvati in their native language should help make the name of Hrvatska make a tad more sense. We can see these people's names in the former part of the name Hrvatska. I believe the ska at the end is a Slavic name-forming element meaning land/land of. We see in the native name of another Slavic-speaking nation too, that being Poland, and their native name
Isn't it also like Swedish, there's like Svenska?
Polska. This means that the English name of Croatia also means the land of the Croats too, and this is probably much easier to figure out, I imagine, for many of us. We can clearly see their name at the start of this name, and the ever-present ear suffix means land of, as many of you know, I'm sure. So while we know the country's name means land of the Hrvati/Croats, what we aren't so sure about is how exactly the Hrvati got their name to begin with. Obviously we know it would have been Hrvati initially before being translated into Croat, but beyond that we really aren't too sure. The name is pretty old, most likely coming from the Middle Ages, and annoyingly sometimes this kind of information was never fully recorded or kept track of. Linguists over the years, however, have come up with some potential ideas as to what the name of Hrvati might mean and where it came from. Wikipedia has a whole heap of these ideas, and while we won't highlight all of them, we will focus on a select few.
Oh, it was called in Latin Croatia, no?
One idea is that it means tree, perhaps in relation to the Hrvati living amongst the trees. Another idea is that it means ranger or highlander, or that it means freedom.
There was an episode in the TV show of Supernatural. You might have seen it with the two Winchester brothers killing all the all the demons and ghosts and stuff like that. There was an episode that there was this this virus or something like that was called Croat. Oh my god, I don't know. It started with Croat and then there was something else. I don't know. And that was from Croatia, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, hope you will talk about it because I don't really remember it. I watched all the episodes, but I always forget this stuff.
Or to cut or strike. One idea is that it means well-armed or warriors clad with horns, but those ideas aren't thought to be as accurate by today's standards. One of the more popular theories, however, is that it means mountains, relating to the Russian word for mountain chains. I'm sure you get the idea. We really have a minimal clue where exactly the name Hrvati came from, but people have had a good crack at it. What we really know for sure is that they did have this name, and eventually their land got named after them, adopting that name of Hrvatska that it still has today. So who was it that turned Hrvatska into the name of Croatia? Well, it was of course the Romans and their Latin. The land area that is now Croatia came under Roman rule in 32 BC and stayed under Roman rule until around 480 AD. This makes sense as the land is just across the water from the Italian peninsula. Croatia
Which barbaric tribe did conquer? Because in Italy, like different barbaric tribes conquer the Italian, the region where there is Italy today. And it was the Longobards, the one that imposed themselves. Which one were the ones that conquered Croatia at the time?
played a large role in the history of Rome too. Perhaps most noticeably, one of the
The
few
emperor.
emperors who actually retired, as opposed to died or was killed, Diocletian, retired to the city of Split, which is in modern-day Croatia.
One of the
His
best
palace is still
emperors,
one of the
in my
city's
opinion.
most popular landmarks. While they had the land that makes up modern Croatia, they didn't actually call it Croatia to begin with, nor did they call it Hrvatska. Instead, they named it Dalmatia, in relation to another tribe who lived in this area. To this day, an area of Croatia is still called Dalmatia. By the time the name of Hrvati and Hrvatska had come into use in the Middle Ages, the Western Roman Empire was long gone, and Latin had transformed into medieval Latin / Vulgar Latin. This was a more corrupt form of Latin spoken across Europe at this time. In fact, most modern Romance languages like French and Spanish actually derived from Vulgar Latin, as opposed to
And
the proper
Italian.
OG Latin. At this time, Vulgar Latin was being used as something of a lingua franca across all of Europe, even in parts of the continent that didn't use Romance languages, like in Slavic-speaking parts of the continent. Now, Slavic languages and Romance languages are two very different kettles of fish. Each language featured different sounds and letter orders to each other, which wouldn't fly in the other language. When Latin speakers came across words that didn't fit neatly into their language, they adapted them so they could, and Hrvatska is a clear example of that. This word of Hrvatska didn't gel with Latin speakers at all for a variety of reasons. I mean, just look at it. A cluster of 3 consonants at the start of the word is unheard of in most Romance languages. One of the biggest issues was the first letter, the H. H has a strange history with Latin, from being pronounced to being silent in different time periods. By the Middle Ages, it seems that Vulgar Latin speakers were not pronouncing H's. This meant that Latin speakers who encountered this
We are still not pronouncing it this day, so
had to do some altering to it so they could even pronounce it. The first thing they did was add a C to the start of it. CH.
okay, when you add a C at the beginning of the phrase, the word, sorry, it totally makes sense why it became Croatia, right? Come on, you can see it so bad.
Was a much more acceptable way of starting a word in Latin, so this made the name more manageable. This gave us the name of Hrvatska, though as the H was silent, it disappeared and gave us Hrvatska. The next issue this name faced for Latin speakers was that V between the R and the A. V's do not really appear all that often like this in Latin, making it difficult to say to Latin speakers.
Yeah, but it doesn't really make sense. It should have been like Croatia, no? Croatia instead of Hrvatska, or Croatia instead of O. How did a V became an O? It would have made more sense to become a U.
To combat this issue, the V was replaced with a vowel to make the word easy to say for Latin speakers. The vowel was of course an O. With this change, you will see we have already arrived at the name of Klotska. The final thing that Latin speakers needed to do was replace the Slavic Landov suffix, ska, with their own Landov suffix, ia, and bingo, we have the name Croatia. This name of Croatia stuck around in Vulgar Latin and made its way across Europe, being adapted into the various forms of the name that we mentioned up top. The nation of Croatia itself, however, stuck with that name of Hrvatska, while over the years since the Middle Ages, the land of Croatia found itself under a variety of different rulers, from the dual monarchy to being part of Yugoslavia, but it held on to that name,
Ottomans,
using it when the nation took on its modern form in 1991. Despite the fact that the name
was Croatia not also under the Ottoman Empire? I know that Bosnia and Serbia were, no? I don't know if Croatia also was.
Croatia and Hrvatska seem so different at first glance. When we take it step by step to see how one name transformed into another, we can see the change fairly clearly. So, why is Hrvatska called Croatia in English? Well, it's basically because Latin speakers couldn't be bothered to figure out how to pronounce it. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel.
I mean, that was really good. That was really good. That was quite a clear explanation. Please go and check out his channel, Name Explain. Big shout out for making this video. I've reacted before to some of his videos, learning more about other topics in general. It was great. It was great. It was great. I really enjoyed this video, and I definitely want to learn more about. I don't want to learn the Croatian language yet, but I want to learn more about Croatian history and the language itself. I know some good channels like Lang Focus that always like teaches you everything about each language. Maybe I would check out that. I really hope the language sim will make an episode of Croatian. Come on, it will be even better. But yeah, if you have any other recommendations, definitely let me know which videos should I check out next. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.